What is going on? This is AlToneRC today. This is my first EDF jet, the DRC. This is the FX9635 from DRC. This is really cool. Now, I will say this. Primarily, I like to talk about RC planes and whatnot for beginners. This one is, I would like to say, a nice beginner style plane. However, I would not recommend this particular one for beginners. It's a fantastic plane, but there are some reasons why I would recommend it for beginners. There are other reasons why I would not. Let's talk about that just a little bit. So the reason why I would recommend this for beginners is because it is very floaty. It flies very well. It's a nice little plane to get acclimated with and get used to flying. The only reason why I would not recommend this for a beginner is because it requires a lot more space. This guy I've actually taken out and flown it in a soccer field size area, and it took most of that space in order to be able to turn. And it does come with 3 different flight modes. However, your major flight mode is the one that basically limits the bank angle so that it keeps the plane upright for you. The second flight mode, B, will allow you to bank just a little bit harder. But, and then of course, and I didn't do this, I didn't take it into the third flight mode, which basically gives you complete control of the aircraft. Is only going to do pretty much what you want it to do. Now, testing these flight modes, if you go into the manual, it'll give you information about your flight modes, and it will tell you what those flight modes actually are. So your 3 flight modes in A is the 6-axis mode, B is the 6-axis large angle mode, which should mean that this guy will angle a little bit more into a turn in the B mode, which is what I actually placed it in. And then your C, it is a 3D stunt mode, which gives you pretty much full control of the aircraft. Now, where I was able to take this guy out and fly for my initial flight, it's not a very large space. So that is usually where I would say, if it can fly somewhat comfortably within that small space, like the space of a soccer field, then I consider that great for beginners. This guy requires more space than that. There's quite a few times I was very, very, very worried. There was no one out at the field when I was flying, but I was worried that I was going to run into something. Now, granted, the way that this guy is made, the nose is super soft, and it's made out of foam. If it hit a vehicle or anything, it's not like it's going to crack a windshield or anything. It's just going to bounce off, basically. But I still didn't want to. I didn't want to take those chances, and I don't like taking those chances. I like to be able to fly something that I know is going to be able to control well. I can fly it within the area of the field that I'm flying it in without having to worry about it getting too close to people or vehicles. Thankfully, again, there were no people outside. The only thing I had to worry about was flying around the vehicles there, and that's something I did not want to do. So I only attempted to fly this for a very short period. The flight was beautiful. I love flying the plane. However, it needs a lot of space, and for that reason, I would say this is not necessarily a beginner plane. It is one that is more for intermediate, just because of the turn radius of the plane. And if you want a tighter turn radius, you have to put it in 3D mode, which I did not do, only because I didn't feel that I had the area and where I felt comfortable flying at the altitudes in which you would want to fly a plane in 3D mode. I just wasn't comfortable with that. So, all that being said, this is my first EDF jet, and I love it. I do plan on taking it out to our flying field where I do have plenty of space, where I can really put this guy to the test. But overall, it's a great, great, great little RC plane. Now, let's talk about just what it comes with really quickly. So first of all, you get the plane or the jet itself, and you do have 2 vertical stabilizers in the rear that have to be glued in. It does come with glue to do so. I just used some CA glue that I actually had available because I fly these so much that I have plenty. And then it does come with your remote control. Remote control is pretty simple. It doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles on the remote as far as different functions. You basically have the standard functions of being able to trim the plane out, which means you can adjust the left, right, up and down of the plane as it's flying based on how the plane is actually flying. So if it happens to be veering to the left a little bit without any control stick input, then you can actually adjust for that. Overall, it's a pretty simple remote to use that does require 3 AA batteries that are not included. It actually comes with two 2S LiPo batteries, and they actually install into your compartment here. The manual actually says something about turning the aircraft on by hitting a switch. This aircraft does not have a switch on it. So once you plug that battery in, it should turn on. Then you can play around with the flight modes by switching the flight modes, throttling up, because it will not enter that flight mode until you throttle up for the first time. And then you can see what it actually does for each one of the flight modes. And then you just put the battery compartment back on after you install the battery, and you're good to go. It does also come with landing gear. And then on top of your openings here in the front, you also have this grade in the bottom that allows air to come into the aircraft so that you get really good airflow. It does fly like a delta wing, which means you have elevons, which is ailerons and elevator mixed, and your controller as well as your electronics actually control the mixing for you, so you don't have to worry about that. So in that aspect, it is a beginner plane, but when you go out to fly this guy, honestly, like I said, with the turn radius in one of the levelized flight modes, I believe that the turn radius is too large for a beginner to fly it. But I still highly recommend this plane. I think it is great, especially if you have plenty of space, then a beginner can fly this plane. So again, I want to thank DRC for sending this guy out to me to try out. I'm looking forward to taking it out to our flight field and really seeing what this guy can do in the 3D modes. Take care and have an absolutely fantastic day.